So now we're going to talk about methods, and we're going to talk in particular about parameters and how you pass values and arguments into the parameters of a method. So this will get you a little bit of practice in how you pass a value into a method. So let's talk about this for a minute. And so I have this method set up, and I'm titling it Who Won. And I totally have these totally fictitious names I just made up, so I don't know if there's a real team named this or not. But I have the dogs versus the seals, just made that up. And the purpose of our method is going to be to determine who won their game. Let's say they played a basketball game or whatever kind of game they played together, and we want to determine who won. So this is what this method is going to do for us. It's going to spit out in our program who won this game. And so when you think about a method, when you set up a method, there are a couple of things you have. One, you have the name of the method, right? And usually you have that name kind of be descriptive of what that method's supposed to do. It's going to describe what that method's doing. And the method's usually going to do some type of action. So in this case, it's going to determine who won the game. So it's going to perform some type of action for us. So it's very descriptive. Who won, right? And then right here, sometimes you'll see void. A lot of times you may see void when you have a method. And that means it's not going to return back anything. It's not going to spit anything out as a result of what it does. It's going to be performing a certain function usually. But sometimes you do want it to return something. You want it to execute its code and return something back to the system when you call it and when you use it. Well, when you do that, you put the parameter. You're going to put actually the return type. This is the return type, not the parameter. This is the return type that you're going to use right here that the method is going to send it back to you. So what I've essentially done is I've taken this string right here and I've given it the name result. And essentially what I've said is, if the score for the seals is greater than the score for the dogs, then we're going to make this result equal the seals won. Right? And so else we're going to make this result spit out the doggies won. And we want this method to return the result to our system. So whenever we're going to use it and call it, it's going to return the result as a result of whatever happens based on the parameters that we set up. So I've set up this variable here, and it's a local variable that's only going to be active inside this method, as you will. And so what we've done is in this method part up here in the header, if you will, we have the name of the method, we have the return type, what it's going to return, and then we have these parameters we set up. So I've set it up right here so that this method can take two integers. And the integers I've gone ahead and set aside really space and memory. So these are like variables, they're just like placeholders, if you will. And we can go ahead later on when we use our method and do more and actually put values in here. But right now we're going to set them up kind of as placeholders. So it's going to be an integer I'm going to pass in. I'm going to call it score seals. And then this is the integer, I'm going to call it score dogs. So I'm just giving it as a placeholder to let it know to accept an integer. And then I'm going to take whatever that integer is, and I want you to do this with it. Take if the score for seals is greater than the score for dogs, then you make this result be seals won, else the result's going to be doggies won. And you're going to return that result, which is going to be a string, back to our system and spit that out in our program in some kind of way when I call it. So let's look down here in our main method. So we're in our main method, and we're going to look at passing values into our who won method that we just created. So let's take a look at this real quick, what I've done here. I've set up our who won method that we have, and essentially what I've done, we've taken the same parameters that we have. So when you want to call a method, you use the name of that method, and you use some type of parentheses to set it up. So what I've done is I've taken the who won method, and I've gone ahead and put in these variables here. And essentially what I'm doing with these variables that I've set up right here, and I've assigned a value. I've initialized the variables, and I've assigned a value to. I've assigned an integer to them. I've actually taken this information and passed it into our who won method that we just set up. And I've taken the whole who won method and stored it in a variable called final result. And I'm going to make that variable a string so we can print out something to the screen. So that's just kind of how I've set it up. But you'll notice these are integers. They're being passed in directly into these parameters that we have set up. So these parameters are integers. They're going to be passed into, and these are just placeholders right here. They're placeholders. They know to expect integers, and here we're going to actually pass in the actual values. And when you pass in the values, we call them arguments. So sometimes you may hear people use parameters and arguments, and they use them kind of interchangeably. Just think of arguments like it's the actual value that you're passing in. And the parameters are the placeholders that you set up in the first place just to give it the structure to tell it what to do, what it's going to do. And then when you actually want to use it, you pass in actual values into the method. So right here we have seal score, and this is the integer being passed in, and dog score, and this is the integer being passed in here. Now I could do this different ways. I could take this, and I could just actually put in, an integer right here, and it will accept it because that score underlined skills is what we have right here. So it'll actually accept it. I can put it right in here. I don't necessarily have to just pass it in the form of another variable. I can take it and put in integers right there. So it'll work either way I want to do it. Now, just as an interesting note, if I wanted to do something like make it 23.2 and make this a double, you see I'm getting a bit of a red line here because it's saying, wait a minute, it's supposed to be an integer, it's not a double. We shouldn't have a double here, we should have an integer because what we've set up here is for us to be an integer that we're going to pass in and not a double. So however way you want to do it, you can actually put the actual values in here, or I can just put this variable, as you can see, as we just have it. I can just put the variable dog score, and that'll adjust it for me as well. So either way, I'm passing in values directly into this method that we want to use. And just to let you know, once again, if I were to make this instead of an integer, if I made this a double, I get an error message right down here in the method call saying, hey, wait a minute, we required an integer and you're putting a double, you're passing a double in here. That's not going to work because you set it up such that it would be an integer. So whenever you look at that, you're going to have some making sure that you're using the correct data type when you're passing it into your method. So I'm going to go back here and make this an integer like it's supposed to be. And as you can see, we're passing in these values into our who1 method. We're passing in the values to the method, and then we're going to run it. And we'll see what it spits out as a result. And it's parsing as you might expect. And I'll go ahead and pull this up so we can see. And the result, as you might expect, is that the doggies won. So it did exactly what we expected to do. It took the dog score, which was 90, which we passed in here, and the seal score, which we passed in here. And because it's in a method, it performed this function, this set of code right here. And it basically said, hey, if the seal score is greater than the dog score, then the seals won. Also, the dog score is greater than the seal score, the dogs won. And that's exactly what you expect. And if I were to change this at all, because we actually then put this in our system.out, that print line, if I were to change this at all, I could make this 230. And the same thing would happen. So we took the method, we put it in a system.out, that print line statement here, and we went ahead and added that variable so it'll show out the result to it. So if I did, and I changed the seal score, and I ran this, you would expect that it goes through the method. Once it gets to the method call, it goes ahead and runs that, and it's going to execute it, and you're going to have a different result, a different return is going to happen because now the seals won. So that's exactly how you do it. When you think about passing a value into a method, really think about how you set up parameters, and these parameters are placeholders. And then you tell within your method exactly what you want it to do, whatever code you want to write. You go ahead and you have some type of return. And in this case, the return type is a string. And we went ahead and set up a variable. And that variable is going to be whatever the result of the code, whatever the result of the action is that we wanted to take and to perform. And then down here, we actually called our method. And we passed in actual values into the method. And we simply put it into a print line, a print statement, and show that variable so it can show up on the screen and show us what it did. So let me know if you have any questions. I wanted to share this with you. And this is a nice, quick, and easy way to learn how to pass values into a method.